our international student population has really grown in the last few years, and that's really made an impact, especially in the city. The majority of these students are going to Lambton College in the city of Sarnia, and well over probably 80% of them are coming from India. But you also look at our temporary worker number, that's sort of the trend with the rest of Canada as well. That's slowly been rising through the years, and that is changing the landscape in our rural areas because of our migrant worker population, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So I hope that kind of gave you a sense of what we look like down there in Sarnia-Lambton, and I'll give a really brief background about our specific live. We started in late 2009. We are led by the County of Lambton, so we're led by our municipality. Our settlement strategy was developed in late 2010, and it has 12 strategies that are organized under these 5 areas of focus. And the rural piece that I'm really wanting to talk with you about today fits under our area of focus of settlement, and specifically the strategy 4 on how to promote opportunities to engage immigrants and newcomers in all of our communities. And as you can see from our statistics, our immigrant population in the rural areas, it's very small and it's very spread out. And so when we did our initial consultation in our planning phase in 2010, we really focused our resources on the city of Sarnia. But the issue of that rural piece came up. It certainly came up in those initial consultations, and so it was worked into, it was added into our final report and our strategy, just really to buy us a bit of time, so we had the time to go out into the rural communities and really see what the needs of the immigrants and newcomers out there were. So to do that, we established a rural outreach working group, really a subcommittee of our LIT Council, which was formed in 2011. We had representatives from our economic development, both of our settlement agencies. Sarnia-Lambton has 2. One of them is our Francophone settlement agency. We also had some rural service providers. Our library was quite a key player, actually, and also we had some representatives, some immigrant representatives. So really the purpose of this group, you can see our objectives up there, but really it was to get a sense of what was going out in the rural areas, what were some of the challenges, what were the needs, and how can we better support the immigrants in those parts of the county. So it did become a little bit of a mini research project. We held some focus groups, but a lot of the information was gathered through really informal meetings with people in the county. So there was a lot of hopping in the car and driving around and talking to people, which I have to say was kind of fun. So some of the findings that came out of that information that we gathered, not a huge surprise. That first point, current service provision is limited in rural areas. We heard that from our settlement agencies, feeling very limited by being able to go out there and provide services. We heard it from our mainstream service providers to say that they didn't see a large number of immigrants and therefore didn't feel as competent in referring them properly or how to actually provide full services to the clients when they did encounter them. So challenges that are similar for all residents in rural areas, like transportation, like access, like coordination, all those kinds of things. The other thing we found, supports really arose on an ad hoc basis and were almost entirely volunteer driven. And we actually came across some very great stories of our smaller communities really mobilizing, residents mobilizing to create sort of an English language class for some people in their community. The challenge with that is they weren't sustained, right? And that was one of the biggest challenges. Another thing is really the majority of the supports that we found in the community, in the rural communities, were geared towards our migrant worker population. And it's kind of interesting because we don't have a very large migrant worker population, really less than 200 workers come into Lambton County annually. But because the majority of our workers are from Spanish-speaking countries, mainly Mexico, and we do have a growing Thai population through the temporary foreign worker program, that they're certainly more visible in the community than, say, immigrants who are coming from Europe and those kinds of things. So identified as a more vulnerable group of people. And most of these supports were given through faith-based communities, faith-based organizations, and really they're all kind of doing their own thing, right? There wasn't a lot of coordination between these groups providing those services. And finally, we found that most of our municipalities, our rural communities, were very welcoming of immigrants and very open to strategies to attract them. And certainly, like many small communities in southwestern Ontario at least, our municipalities have been seeing a real decrease in their population since 2006, and so really saw the value of attracting immigrants from that economic perspective, of course, but I went a bit deeper, I think, that welcoming piece, because in these, sort of the example I gave you of these smaller communities mobilizing, it was really the sense of, you're in our community, we want to support you, we want to make sure you get what you need. So that was really great to see